Puana I ka malu e waahila, a e puana no hoi o puana, I mua no hoi o kou e kia naina e maliu mai me, I kia panela, e ho'omalu I ana, e ke kumu, I kaua I ka Hailiʻōpua, a me kāna mau haumana, kāna mau pua, e pua, mau ana.
Mahalo. Mahalo ia oko e nā hoa I ākuakua mai nei I loko ke ia hale keaka o Kennedy a peia pū me ka poe e noho ana I ka malu o ko lako mau home. Ka poe ki e halo no hoi mahalo I ko oko noho ana mai me mako I ke ia hola me ka 15 minuke paha e kama ilio ai I ke ia papahana hou o Puana. He hana keaka ia. He wahi leo mahalo ke ia I ka poe nana I ho'olala I ke ia wahi panela o ia hoi ka Hawaii Pono I Coalition. Malalo o ke ia papahana o Hawaiian History Month. No leila mahalo anui ia oi e Malia no Briga Olivera I kauhana nui I loai ke ia papahana I lahai no hoi ke ia papahana. Mahalo no hoi ia oi e Kauka Craig House I ko kono ana mai ia mako I ke ia papahana o Hawaiian History Month. A me na 5 hana like ole I ho'omako kau I ke la ke ia pule o ka mahina o kepa ke mapa e hali ai kako I na hana nui ana mo'i ka mo'i wahine a me ona mau pilikana peia pū me na kamaaina o Hawaii ka lahui Hawaii ka poe I alo I ka ehu pōkā e ho'e ai mākou ia nei I ke ia la e mau ai ka lahui hoi. He leo mahalo no hoi ke ia OEV TV no kalako hana nui e ho'olele I ke ia mau papahana ke la ke ia pule I loko ke ia mahina mo'olelo Hawaii. Oia I hola na mahalo. Mahalo ka poe o Kennedy Theatre no hoi ka poe I ai mai I ke ia papahana nei. Mahalo ia oko e na lala e noho pu nei me ia u ma ke ia ka hua nei. E hoi ke iki I ke ia mo'olelo o Puana I ke ia ahi. E ia no na muhaole ana. Aloha no kako. Oh, that was Olelo Hawaii. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us here at Kennedy Theatre for this panel about Puana, the upcoming Hawaiian Theatre production that will happen in 1 week's time on this very stage. We open a week from tonight. And so this evening we're going to share a little bit with you about the inspiration, the journey, and some of our learnings, as well as a short scene and a mele this evening from this production, an original mele composed by Keawe Lopes and Zachary Alakaʻi Lum. No leila, let's go ahead and move forward with introductions. I'm Hailiʻōpua Baker. I hail from the island of Kauai, Kapa'a to be more specific. And I'm a professor here in the Department of Theater and Dance, and just really grateful to have this space to tell our mo'olelo, to honor our mo'oku'auhau, to honor our Olelo Hawaii, and the various types of hana no'eo that have been passed down from one generation to the next. And we're going to start this panel this evening with short introductions, and with that introduction, if we can share what our role, our relationship to this particular production has been. So I'm the playwright, one of the playwrights and director of this production, and I'm going to pass over to my co-playwright.
I am a co-playwright. Aloha mai kākou, auau Kaipulaumakaniolono, he iki unu no kumuko'olau. Yeah, so my capacity in this production has been as kind of a co-playwright, but primarily as to serve a kind of dramaturgical function and supporting in the revision of this hana keaka of Puana. Um, I currently I'm an instructor at Kaipulaumakaniolono Center for Hawaiian Studies, and yeah, I'm happy to be here to share a little bit about this hana keaka and hopefully entice nā hoa aloha aina to join us in just the 5 nights that we have available to show this hana keaka. So please get your tickets.
Aloha mai kākou, velina manoa o wau o Keawe Baker, no ka ua kia po'ai hale o ka halu'u mai au. Aloha everyone, my name is Keawe Baker. I am a current student in the hana keaka program, wrapping up my last year with a focus in performance and costume design. And that is what I'm doing in this show. I'm performing as Nai, and I'm designing the costumes with my co-designer, Miley Speechens, who is my kumu and costume design. Yeah.
Velina me ke aloha, aloha nui kākou, o wau no keia, o Joshua Bubba, Kamoani ala Tavares. Aloha, how's it everyone? I'm Joshua Bubba, Kamoani ala Tavares. I hail from Honaunau on Hawaii Island, and I am the most recent graduate of the hana keaka program in May of this year, and currently stepped into the role of assistant professor of acting here at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Yes, very excited about that. Very grateful for the opportunity. And I play Kawohi Onalani in Puana, and very grateful to be here with all of you. Mahalo nui.
Aloha mai kākou, o wau nei ke ia o I Kaika Mendez, he kama kola ola o no honua ula ma ka moku puni o Maui no Kanaeo hoi. Aloha, my name is Kaika Mendez, and I am from the island of Maui, and I am in my second year, going into my second year, in the MFA Hana Keaka program under Kumu Hailiʻōpua, and yeah, and that's how I got involved with all of this, and I am playing the part of Kahalelau Mamane. Mahalo nui.
Mahalo, mahalo. I'm just making the connection that we have the Pai Aina o Hawaii on this stage right now, from Kauai to Hawaii Island. Yeah, with Oahu and Maui in between. That's beautiful. Okay, so we want to... no, kalamai. I think we want to just have a conversation, yeah, and talk stories a little bit about this production, the work on this production. And I say this, that we're going to have this conversation as we are approaching Magic Week. Yes? So tomorrow we go into technical rehearsals, and it's going to be a very long weekend for us. And I think many of us are quite excited about all of the elements coming together. And then Monday we get to put clothes on, yeah? So, Monday we get our dress rehearsal where we get to wear all those wonderful costumes in addition to the lights and the sound and projections and film and all of that goes in beginning, it started today, but really beginning tomorrow for the cast to experience and adjust our performance to. So as we talk about that, I wanted us to maybe share a little bit about inspiration for the project, maybe where we drew inspiration from for our roles, and then talk a little bit about our contributions as a cast. And I'll be first to say that the work that has been created wouldn't be possible without each and every person's contribution. As this is an original work, in the process, we are revising. There's been a really organic, collaborative process with the work where, we have pages and pages of dialogue, and I know I overwrite, that we say, oh, we don't need all of this. Yeah, maybe we can just jump to this. And it's been really great to have such a talented group, a cast that is, really akamai and very intuitive, and able to kind of come to the table with their experience in various productions or various form of hana no eo and be able to help craft this story. And I also want to mahalo Kaipulaumakaniolono here, who is also a graduate from our MFA program in hana keaka, and a PhD candidate right now in English. Yes, not candidate yet. Almost there. Kalamai. I was just claiming it, putting it out in the universe, But he's getting close. I just wanted to say special mahalo because, there's certain things that as the writing was happening, I really felt like I need somebody to work with on this. And it was a real blessing for me to be able to turn to Kaipu, someone who, we can communicate in shorthand. There was one point, on the Google Doc that I left a note, and then I came back, and there was this passage there, and I said, that's exactly what I was thinking. So the development has just been so awesome and wonderful. And I'm so grateful that we were able to collaborate on the development of the kūpuna role in this particular story. So inspiration. It might make sense for me to talk a little bit about inspiration and then go to everybody else. I think the primary inspiration behind this story was really the experience of having gaps in knowledge, having gaps from one generation to the next, and how sometimes the gap can be filled through a mele, or the gap can be filled through a family artifact that, might make its way to us from another family member. And then the understanding of what that moment in time may have meant and how that may have transformed our understanding of who we are, and feed into our particular journeys. Yeah. I truly believe it's only when we are ready to receive that we will receive. And not to get very biblical, but sometimes we are our own blocks, right? And when we make room, then we're ready to receive. Or sometimes things need to clear. Something in our journeys or something in our work, things need to move aside so that we can receive. And sometimes that receiving is a very quick download. Or there's a plethora of stuff that comes our way. And then we're able to kind of stare at the puzzle and then the pieces fall together. So that was one of the major inspirations. Music has also been a major inspiration. I think in the past year, actually, with our Research Institute of Indigenous Performance, or ANO, Ahahui Noi No'ea Oiwi, that we were able to establish under a grant from the Office of the Provost for a strategic investment initiative. We were able to have some hana no'ea workshops that everyone here on stage was able to partake in. And with the funding that we had, we were able to bring in some Maori musicians and recording artists to kind of sit with our haumana and talk about, composing today. And what does that mean to record our stories today and compose today, but be very grounded in our cultural knowledge, right? Our culture, like fluency in our cultural knowledge, fluency in our language, an understanding of the past, and guiding ourselves or helping to ho'okele or to steer ourselves into the future. That was another thing that was kind of sitting with me in that experience. And then there's just stories in our ohana, right? And having ohana members that were entertainers who went abroad, or were celebrated during their time and then a little bit forgotten because their stories wasn't told. So there's that too. That was another inspiration. Yeah, that's kind of the inspiration for this mo'olelo. Ka'ipu.
Yeah, kind of ditto a little bit, but I think for me I have two primary inspirations that kind of went into and guided a lot of my thinking through developing the script, and especially with the revisions and the addition of the kūpuna role. One is kind of a more like theoretical inspiration, and that being the kind of conversation between this kind of Hawaiian conservatism versus, the need to create new knowledge and new ways of expressing. But the first one is really tied to, I think, this material reality that a lot of us are confronted with as it relates to the territorial period. And like Mom was saying, I was reading a text as I was preparing to teach 107 this semester about the plantation era. And one of the quotes that the author brought up was his uncle told him that somebody got to tell our story, because he was talking about the late plantation era, kind of the transition from the plantation into the tourist economy and how that kind of faded out and everything like that in the 40s and 50s-ish kind of era, and with the transition into statehood. And not a lot is kind of known or readily available to just general knowledge about what happened during that era, because we kind of have this idea of, okay, there's the major epochs of traditional Hawaiian society, whatever, that ended in 1819 for some reason with the Aikapu, and then there's a kingdom, and then the overthrow, and then statehood and the Renaissance, and then here we are today, So, but between, say, like after following the overthrow and leading up to statehood, a lot was happening, but a lot of what was happening was forcefully kind of covered up. And I think if you guys get a chance to read the play guide, Professor Kāwe Wright in Hawaiian Studies has contributed a piece to kind of really kind of gloss over, what are the really kind of important things to know about that territorial period. And one of the main things is there's like the massive land grab that comes from the 1895 Land Act, and there's with that there's a total shift in the education system because everything is really kind of run by the oligarchy that overthrew the Hawaiian kingdom. But there's also this myth that Hawaiians weren't in control of their destiny during the territorial period, which is true to a certain extent, but that really isn't fully realized until after the Second World War, and then that's when you see this the major surge in settler colonial power that kind of gets transitioned from just the oligarchy people down, and then from the GI Bill and everything like that, and then you have the Asian settlers kind of rising up and taking power. So, but in that era, we have so many mo'olelo of Kānaka who tried their best, to make do with the situation that was presented with them, and some of this happens in the hapahaole industry, where Hawaiians who maybe they grew up in the royal courts, they had to make those skills livable. They had to find a way to make money to support their families with those skills, and this is kind of like a surprisingly ubiquitous story that you can tell to people in their ohana, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, that was how my grandpa was, or that was how my tutu was." They kind of just took their music and they went away and they made money and whatever. And whatever story is spun in the ohana, that kind of it's tinged with all of the loss that happens in that particular historical period. And so we tend to think, oh, they just went away. When really they were making the best decision for themselves at that particular moment. And it's really up to us to recover the ike that is, that they could leave for us. And so I think this story is really about that, is really coming to terms with the difficult decisions that our kupuna had to make, and finding a way to once again the little gems that they left us. And that leads me to kind of my theoretical inspiration, which is, now that we're in this period of Renaissance revival and there is some sort of stability, we don't have an immediate fear of, the language dying tomorrow, though it very well could die next generation. So remember that. Olelo Hawaii, e olaka olelo Hawaii. But now that we have this kind of energy behind things Hawaiian, how much are we willing to just move with the current of the time, and create knowledge that is going to be, beneficial and suited to our situation? And how much are we willing to put into recovering what was in the past? And what are the unique ways in which our kupuna express themselves, and finding the balance between the two. And in a lot of the revision process, I think what I really wanted to develop is the need for an intelligent conservative position. And this is something that Kumu Keawe has really taught me, and that there is reason to hold on and to not want to change, because the ways in which our kupuna express themselves is the language that is that has been honed for generations. It's the language with which we communicate with our aina. It's the language with which we communicate to our akua. And it's the language that has this kind of unique, distinctive Hawaiianness about it. And yet, if all we're doing is talking in antiquity, and talking in this kind of antiquated language, then Hawaiian might as well be like Latin. It's just gonna die out if we don't make it applicable to today. So there's a need for both sides of the spectrum. But as I kind of, and in honing, you want to find a way to recover that Hawaiian aesthetic, which is something that the play kind of really deals with. And in finding that aesthetic, I think it's really important that innovation comes not from without, but from within. It has to come from within the craft. And I think that's kind of finding a way to walk that tightrope is one of the main issues that Puana deals with. And so those are kind of my two mana'o.
Wow. He's writing a PhD. Yeah, I think what he said was really what we were all kind of talking about language revitalization, retaining knowledge, evolving with knowledge, and creating knowledge. That's one of my biggest inspirations in life. Growing up in Kuilakaiapuni, we don't really have fun songs that are applicable to this day and age and what we hear on the radio. And it's always been an inspiration for me to write a new genre of mele, to contribute to many genres that we've already listened to every single day, but in Olelo Hawaii. And for my character personally, that's what she's about. She's about evolving with language. She's about evolving with mele. And she's the one that's pushing that. And luckily, we will hear a new mele that I wrote, and it's in the hana keaka. But I want to do another shout out to our Maori hoa who came here on the annual grant to support us and guide us through this journey of hakumele and hakumele i kia o nei. for our kamali'i, for our lahui, for our kūpuna, and for the next hanauna to come. They were really an inspiration to us in, how are we writing these meles? What kind of perspective do we have on these meles? And this Hawaiian aesthetic that Kaipu was talking about that's explored in the hana keaka, it's mentioned a few times where our Hawaiian aesthetic is based in our aina and our language. And that was something that our Maori cousins were pushing for us to focus in on. And yeah, we all got to write different mele in that journey, and I'm just glad that one of them is going to be on this stage, because it is our time to holomua. It is our time to evolve. We gotta do it, because it is going to be extinct. If it's not done now, the next generation will have this thought of, oh, can I do this? Can I do that? Or maybe not. And then a pau ka'ike. So, we got to swallow the big pill. We got to walk on that tight rope. And we got to haku ho. We got to haku mele. So that was the big inspiration for me for this hana keaka. As for the costumes, one of my biggest inspirations was Lole Aloha that we wear today. But really customizing all of our lole to each of our own body and each of our own characteristics. And for the Bana Nui, Kumu Mailespijans did a great job in creating that period appropriate and accurate costumes that are significant to that 1940s and 1950s look that we see. One of our inspirations for this hana keaka, Prince Kauahiona in. So it's really special that we had this opportunity to bring these kūpuna on stage with us, to honor them, and to create a new leo of mele. So yeah, that's my inspiration.
Yeah, all of that. So on a personal level, I grew up in a very musical household, and both of my grandfathers on my mother and my father's side raised me in Hawaiian music, whether it was in the garage, at church, or on the stage, because they both performed in Waikiki, Lahaina, all over the place with that style of music that came from the 40s and the 50s. So I actually invited one of my grandfathers, who's still with us, to come and watch us, because this is his kind of music. So, Papa, you gotta come and get your ticket. And that's where I'm drawing a lot of my inspiration, is my personal journey. Because the character of Kahale Laumamane is, I don't want to say a traditionalist, but it's very kupa'a I ke ano na kūpuna. He's very firm in the mele Hawaii that have been and that has been passed down to his generation, and from there drawing his inspiration to create more mele. And yeah, on a personal level, it's the same thing, because I grew up around all of these different styles of Hawaiian music, whether it be traditional oli or it be Hawaiian jazz from the new Paradise Serenaders, and all these different types of styles that we are getting from different artists up into today, and kind of using those as tools in your belt, and to create your own, but still using those that have come before you. So that's my inspiration. It's at a personal level on my own journey through what is ia mea he mele Hawaii. What is Hawaiian music? Because that's a question that has been asked for many years and still being asked. Yeah, so that's about me. Mahalo.
Yeah, similar for me, I'd say personal experiences growing up in a family of musicians and music being part of my life in many ways. And this kind of renaissance of reggae music and local music, and what is its place in Hawaii's history, right, as Hawaiians. And we love to skank to, the jockey move at each luau. And so that kind of stuff has been an inspiration for me too. just from my own personal experiences and coming back home after living away for many years, and my identity as a Hawaiian and my connection to language, to mele, and which is something that's echoed with Kauohionalani, the character that I play. And he kind of straddles both worlds in a beautiful way of supporting both of his friends. And he kind of, will lean in one direction and support Nai, and then he'll lean in the other direction and support Hale. And I believe that he is able to see both sides, which I think is a beautiful ha'avina, perhaps a lesson for audiences to maybe take away. And so for me, the inspiration has been from my personal life and also the relationship to kūpuna and the things that we don't know, right? The gaps that you brought up, Kumuhaili, which everybody knows and can experience. It's a universal in that sense of what's missing and how do we fill those missing gaps in our lives, the different parts of our identity, and how can we be more in tune, more in sync, more in touch with those who come before us with our kupuna.
Mahalo, mahalo, mahalo nui. Okay, so we're kind of leaning into our personal journeys. So maybe we can talk about maybe something that we've learned, a light bulb that went on in this process. And I know that the process is not complete. It's ever changing and it's ever growing for us. But maybe we can share a little bit about that.
I learned how to play guitar. No,
yes.
Not really. Kinda.
Yes.
Yeah. So just kind of the musical elements of it all. I think there's been a lot of new stuff for all of us in that regard. So being able to play traditional Hawaiian music on the guitar and like create our own sound. What is the sound of Puana, right? And so that's been something new for me, certainly. Yeah.
I learned how to play the upright bass. Not really. So one of the things is actually the name of this hana keaka, which is Puana. And, growing up, almost every Hawaiian song, Mena Hawaii, had a Puana or ha'ina or something like that. So we grew up knowing what Puana is, but throughout this journey, it's really Puana. Yeah, Puana, ka Puana. It has blossomed. It has really enlightened me on what this word really means and its relationship to mele and the place that mele has in our language, in our culture, in our history. So it also ties into pilina, like what the relationships that is created through mele, and you see it too in the writing of the play, right? The mele is what's driving the story, right? If we're going back in time, we're coming to present day because of the mele, and the mele is what's weaving things together. So because of this word puana, that's something that's continuously blossoming, into a pua for me, on this journey.
I'm learning how to play the ukulele. Kinda. I think one of the biggest aha moments for me right now was a few weeks back. Kumu Hailiʻōpua prompted us with this question of what kind of holoholona would your hame be? Would your character be? And shockingly, we all chose a holoholona that started with pu. So I was Pulelehua.
Puel.
Pua'a. There's only so many poos.
Yeah. And then Ka'ula was the Kauae.
Yeah. Which was really interesting because all of these things, well, except you fly, but Kamapua'a has many kinolao that grants him those abilities to travel. And I think that's kind of what these holoholonas carry with them. They're these holoholonas that take things with them to somewhere else. And that's kind of our journey. I feel like we're taking this hana keaka and we're transporting you all to a time period, hopefully, with the costumes, with the lighting, with the scenic design. Shout out to Chris, who's in the house, our scenic designer. Yeah, so I think, I don't know what I'm saying right now, but it was really interesting that we all kind of chose a holo that started with a poo. Sorry, that was my aha moment.
The flight, I think that's something really interesting, the flight, that each of them, right, had the ability to observe things. And we talked about that, right? So they get a perspective from above, and then they also get a perspective on ground. And that was something that, well, we did an exercise. We talked about it, and I guess this is a peek into the preparation as an actor, right? But, you know, that was quite interesting, you know. And then the conversation we had about the pua'a being the grounded one and not willing to shift, that was really kind of interesting how everyone came to that perspective.
And then the pueo is a very wise manu that is a very observant and kind of the one that holds the maluhia in that environment. And the pulelehua, she kind of evolves. She goes from a caterpillar and just so I think that's very kanai sweet.
Hey, Manako.
I wasn't there, but my animal was the pupule. But what I think what I've been learning in this journey is, you know, I've been trying to think about this question as well, the Heahia mea ke mele Hawaii. This question was actually first posed to me in Hawaiian 401 that I took with Kumu Kaikina de Silva. And she, you know, facilitated this conversation amongst, you know, nascent learners of the Hawaiian language. And after a moment, or after maybe like 15 or so minutes of conversation, she said that, "O ka eha ke aloha, oia ka mea Hawaii ai ke mele Hawaii." And young and dumb as I was at the time, I was like, that's a terrible definition. It's so subjective. But I'm thinking about it more and more now, you know, I think because in the script you'll see, you know, in the very first scene they have this conversation about what it is he mele Hawaii. And they list all these different things that might be characteristic of mele Hawaii, etc., etc., etc. But what I've been learning in kind of my doctoral studies, and I'm delving into psychoanalysis a little bit, but the proliferation of signifiers is really just going to make you a little bit, like, a lot more alienated from the original content that you're talking about. So whatever you assign concepts, whenever you assign mana'o or you try to describe something, in trying to describe it, you're layering on more and more meaning and more stuff that's really just taking you away from the object. So that really subjective eha, that seems very kind of like, what does that mean? But it finds a way to kind of pierce through all of that. Oh, it's a certain cadence, it's a certain tempo, it's you know, it uses XYZ, what does Kumulale Kimura call it, Meivi, Mele, and stuff like that. It has like all these really kind of, when you break it down into that really kind of literal form, when you enumerate all those things, you lose the essence of what it is, he mele Hawaii. But if you think about this idea of ka'eha ke aloha, you know, it's a painful enjoyment. It's a painful pleasure, and I think you can hear that in the mele of this era. If you listen to a band like Kalama Quartet, for example, there's this wailing in describing something so beautiful. It's so beautiful that it hurts. And even in the hapahaole genre, if you think of the iconic songs like Waikiki by Andy Cummings, you know, the very first lyric is, "There's a feeling deep in my heart stabbing at me just like a dart." You know, and it's that stabbing, it's that pain, it's that longing that characterizes this thing called aloha. And I think that's a radically different kind of aloha from what we kind of are typically conditioned to think in terms of like aloha spirit and whatever. And John Dominus Holt kind of captures this idea of the eha ke aloha in his novel Waimea Summer, where at a gathering, somebody starts singing songs to honor this one noblewoman's family, and he notices that initially she takes pleasure in the song, but that pleasure quickly turns into a kind of a grimace of an expression of some sort of pain. And I think the protagonist, Mark, he describes it as, always these remnants of our past come back to prick, to sting us. And in that, this is a line that I put into the play. He looks to one of the haules there in the audience, and he says, he looks at he characterizes their expression as a glacial indifference. And he says, perhaps we all need to be a little bit more indifferent. We whose lives are rooted in the indigenous compost heap of island history. And I just thought that's such a beautiful expression that's characteristic of this era that we're working with. This era of the territorial period in which, and he elaborates this on being Hawaiian as well, that it's a painful burden to appreciate the beauty of what it is to be Hawaiian. In a way, he talks about it that we're psychologically captive to the spirit of the past. But it's in this psychological captivity that we are able to appreciate the world with this Hawaiian aesthetic. Because this Hawaiian aesthetic is extremely concerned with appreciating the beauty of the world to the extent that it hurts us, to love beyond what is good for us. And I think that's something that is really kind of that is characteristic of a lot of mele. And so I would say yes, kumukaikina, that is absolutely correct. O ka eha a ke aloha, ka mea e Hawaii ai ke mele Hawaii. And with that, kind of thinking that as the spirit that's kind of in the at the heart of mele Hawaii, it's possible then to expand, to move beyond antiquity and to create mele for today, as long as they capture this spirit of the eha a ke aloha. And that's something that Kawohi says at the end of the play. He says, we need to pay attention to the aloha kupouli e hakuma mai ana ia'u mai ko'u kūpuna, something like that. And it's an aloha that is full of dread. It's a dreadful aloha because we love so much that it hurts. And that's what I think aloha is. And if you don't, and I think to take this into the political, if you don't aloha aina like that, that's not really aloha aina. Because there's so much aloha aina now that is, this is my merch. There's aloha aina this, aloha aina that. Let me put it on the hashtag. Let me kukia imauna, whatever. But where were you when people was hurting? How you gonna show that eha a ke aloha? Because no more eha, no more aloha.
Mahalo. That makes me think of tears welling up in my eyes, leaving Kaho'olawe or leaving areas on Kauai. And I think many of us have those experiences, right? When we're back on our aina with our ohana, and the stabbing deep in my heart. I think that is something that many of us can relate to, and Kawohi goes on that journey to understand that. And hopefully he's able to unpack that and carry that forward with him in his journey, and how he tends to guide his friends too, so that they can come to an understanding as well, as they move forward as Kānaka today, and the things that we carry with us today, that keeps us rooted in the past. Mahalo, mahalo. I'm really, my learning is that I'm surrounded by the most amazing people that I learn from each and every day. This journey is not possible without that. And I also want to kind of ho'ike I ko'u aloha piha me ko'u mahalo piha ia oe kaliko ko'u koko olua me ka ole o ia e ole oe holo ke ia mau papahana mahalo I ke kako. And the other thing today, I was driving in today, and I thought to myself, oh, I gotta reach out to Grandma B, because this story was also inspired by conversations I had with my grandma. And I'm driving in, and I just start crying. I'm turning on Dole Street, and I'm just crying. And I'm thinking, I have to bring my grandma, because this is her era. This is, the music that she talks about her papa playing and everything. So that is, I feel like this is hitting us on different personal levels. And then, what is this? Psychological levels, right? Academic, scholarly levels. And most of all, in our na'au. Yeah. There's something about it that I think sometimes when you're writing, and this personally, you're writing this script. I say, why am I separating myself? As I'm writing this script, right? Don't want to do the third person thing. As I'm writing this script, there's things coming and I'm not exactly sure, but you put it on paper. And then things start to align and fall into place. And it's guidance from our kūpuna, right? That's really how this happens. And so I'm just very grateful, and I want to share that. I'm very grateful that we had a group of people willing to go on this journey and willing to kind of take the leap and dive into the deep blue ocean and then figure out, okay, which way are we going now? Yeah. And then figure out the path that's going to help us to pai makua one. Yeah. And tell this mo'olelo. Okay, we're going to transition to another question. Kalamai. What has been the most exciting or challenging part of this journey?
Learning how to play the ukulele and learning 10 new mele. About 10. There's about 10 that we're like playing. Yeah, we're singing. Yeah. Another challenge for me is definitely managing my kuleana as an actor on stage and my kuleana as a designer on and off stage. That has been my biggest challenge.
Something as a musician that is challenging for me, no matter how many times I have to do it, is always play a vamp or a chorus or something, or a verse while talking, not singing. So that is like a challenge for me when as a musician, but now as an actor, it's kind of it kind of has its own form as an actor, because we're moving a lot, but saying a lot of heavy things, saying a lot of things that are very vai-vai, a lot of things that carry a lot of meaning. So trying to honor the things that we're saying and to make sure that message is there, while trying to move and open this and go up there, move to that side of the stage, move to this side of the stage. So it kind of is those two things on the music side and the acting side. Yeah. Yeah, very that.
Yeah, I think for me, it's the music. Learning the music has been kind of both, like very exciting and also very challenging. Not a style of music that I would say I'm very familiar with. And definitely playing and singing and doing all of those kinds of things have been challenging. Yeah, I think that's it for me.
Yeah, I think also the music for me. Thank goodness I don't have to sing or anything. But I feel like a lot of times when we talk about this era in Hawaii's history, this the territorial period, we often kind of think of it as like the bastardization of Hawaiian culture. And I think Haunani Trask has, with the lovely hula hands, and everybody has to read it, and that means bad tourism and bad hapahaole because this is us, prostituting our culture and all this kind of stuff. But there's a real movement. I feel like there's a need to kind of salvage something of a Hawaiian aesthetic and of a real, a real situation in which Hawaiians were in, where they needed to make something of themselves to survive, to sustain their families and all this kind of stuff. And so salvaging in the music and trying to find the ways in which Kānaka were willing to adapt traditional Hawaiian mana'o into the hapahaole genre, but at the same time finding the little streaks of their resistance, that's kind of always embedded within there. And I feel like most kūpuna you talk about from that era, they wouldn't call it resistance because they don't like stand out. They don't want to be the radicals, and this is a huge thing that the PKO had to go against, in the 70s. It's like, oh, all you radicals, you guys stirring up everything, and this is that's very not a Hawaiian thing to do, to stand out and make something of you, like make big body and whatever, go against the flow. But when there is something worth fighting for, I think George Helm and Emmett Aluli and Kimo Mitchell and all of the people who really gave their lives showed us that there is something in this Hawaiian aesthetic, in this Hawaiian concept of the sacred, that is worth dying for. And we need to try and find in the things that our kupuna did, in the things that our kupuna left for us, that something that is present, that is uniquely Hawaiian. If we really want to have any sort of, chance at, getting the kingdom back or whatever, any sort of substantial decolonization, we need to think about what is this thing that makes us really Hawaiian. And I think a lot of it comes down to that eha ke aloha. And, thinking about how Kānaka, we no scared cry, or at least traditionally we no scared cry. My dad likes to say, he hale kipa kawai makana ke aloha. But if you think about the songs that our kupuna sing, it's all about getting to that point. It's all about experiencing the full depth of the aloha. And trying to find that in the mele of that era, I think is something that's really important.
Mahalo nui. I'm going to transition to the next prompt on the note of mele. So we have, is it 14 mele? 14 mele, I think. Something like that. They're about there, yeah. A good majority are new mele that were composed for this. And I think that's my answer for what's the magical element that the audience should experience or should look out for. The mele that were composed by Keawe Lopes and Zach Alakaʻi Lum, even though they are composed today, they sound like they're from that time. And so that was one of the learnings, right? To try and emulate what the kind of music that was being created. And these compositions are just so beautiful and so deeply connected to this concept of eha as well, eha ke aloha. And there's two particular mele that stick out for me right now, and that's no ku'ukama ku'ulei. And that particular mele is a love letter, really, from the kūpuna to his mo'opuna. Likely from him to his child, but then that mele ends up in the hands of the grandchild, and the grandchild learns the mele and performs the mele, and that is something very special. He hears it on a paleo or on a record, and he takes that mele and shares it at their gig at Mukiki Bar and Grill. Yeah. That was fun to name a bar and grill. Mukiki Bar and Grill. Yes, inspired by Mukiki Vaina Mama o Manoa, the language celebration and competition that Kumukeawe and I started. Oh gosh, that was years ago. I don't know. It was 2003, something like that. But it was an event, a gathering that would bring all of the Haumana Olelo Hawaii from Kawaihuelani Center for Hawaiian Language together so that they could showcase their kind of beauty in the language, the mikololehua of the language, at whatever pai they were. So from first year all the way up to our graduate students in different areas of speech and music and hana keaka and film. So that particular celebration definitely inspired the idea of Mukiki Bar and Grill. The other mele I do want to mention, though, is a mele, again, from the kupuna that his mo'opuna stumbles upon, which is O Hawaii Ku'uho Me Aloha. And this mele, yeah, was something I had asked Kumukeawe to compose based on the dramaturgical needs of the play. In the play, Kawohi discovers about his kupuna's journey, and the stories that are passed on in the family is, oh, he loved being in America. He just, that was a thing. He was so happy to tour here and there and do all of these exciting things. But Kawohi finds out that his kupuna actually missed home. And it is his home aloha, his kulaiwi, that he has this desire for, and this li'a for, the aina that he grew up in, and how that is a part of his identity, that is who he is. And the lyric goes, Ya'u e ho'ola'i ana I keanu o maleka. Yeah. So while he's enjoying himself in the coldness of America, right, the bitter cold, and he talks about being in New York and whatnot, he is still wanting to be warm, and he wants to be home. And the imagery in that particular song, it's eha. I'm going to use, I think that's our thing today. We're talking about the eha o ke aloha. And it's a duet that they get to perform together. So Ka'ula Krug and Kamwani Ala get to perform that together. And it's a moment where the kupuna comes through. He comes through and visits his mo'opuna, and then that's something that he shares. There's this transference of knowledge via the magic of theater. Yes? But it's actually a song composition that he finds in his kupuna's memoir. So for me, that's the magical element. That's one of the magical elements that the audience can look for when they come to see the show. Is there things that perhaps you all would like to mention? Like, why should people come? What's going to be exciting? What's the magic?
Everything is magical. The mele, the script, the lights, the scenic design, the costumes. Again, the mele. Yeah, it's the whole show is accompanied by mele, like the whole entire show. And I think that's gonna be our va'a to take us on that journey to that time period where it comes from, where it's inspired by. Yeah, just come check it out. You know, you like Yeah,
I don't know if I turned it on for her, but does she die? Hello, hello. There I am. For me, what everybody already said is the magic, and I think the ultimate magic is that it's a new piece that is totally created by incredible minds, incredible hearts, incredible artists, incredible storytellers. And so for me, that is the magic, that this new mo'olelo of, Puana exists. So that's for me the magic. So come check it out.
Oh, okay. The magic is that, again, the storyline and the weaving in of mele. It's relatable to all kinds of situations that we have in our families, and I think that's evident. And no matter like what you find from your kūpuna, and in this case it's mele and the musical journeys of Kawohi's kūpuna. It's specific to mele, but then in our own families we find things that our kūpuna did that we never knew. And so I think that's the magic, is contextualizing this story and the connection that this generation and our ancestors have, and contextualizing it into our own families and those stories, because it's all relatable. Yeah, so that's the magic of hana keaka.
Yeah, I definitely kako. The mele are going to be these vessels, and just like how Pukui says, no mo'olelo is complete without a mele, and Poipoi says you don't really know the mele until you know the mo'olelo. And so there's kind of this tandem of mo'olelo and mele, and they kind of inform one another. And the magic for me is the mele and the mo'olelo informing Kawohi's relationship with his kupuna, Kawohi Onalani. And I think that's really kind of the keystone piece to this hana keaka. That is really where the magic is going to happen, because through reading the journal of the kupuna, and through, there's kind of like Down on the Sidewalk in Waikiki that Aina Paikai and Justin Achong did. The notebook serves as kind of this blending of the realm between the living and the dead. And it's kind of this inheritance that pushes the protagonist to do things that maybe he didn't have the courage to do before, and to realize his true kind of mission, his purpose, and to have the courage to take those steps. And so I think the magic is really in the blending of and the thinning of the veil between the living and the dead, and connecting with our kupuna, and allowing the mo'olelo that we hear in our family to connect with a mo'olelo that we're hearing on paper, to a mo'olelo that we perform in song and is performed for us in the intergenerational recitation of mele and that form of transmission of knowledge. And so that's really kind of the mo'olelo, the magic of the mo'olelo, that is Puana, which will be Puana next week.
Mahalo Anui. I just want to share the excitement that's starting to build. Today we had our paper tech, and so it was the first kind of reveal of projections and lights and images and all of the things that, the designers have been working on. And we have just a stellar group working on the different facets to make this magic come together. And so the vintage footage that you'll see, we also had an amazing meeting this morning with Kylan, Reese from Pacific Strings. It was just amazing. So their website has this incredible collection, and this was in partnership with Bishop Museum and the State Archives, and from Ali'i to the different troubadours to the different bands, whether it was the Royal Hawaiian Band, the different string bands, wahine and kane. And there was some bands that came up when I was doing my doctoral research, like the Kauai Hau Quintet and all of these different things, and they have images of them. So just a shout out to him and his support. We will be able to incorporate those images as a part of our pre-show and our intermission. And so today has been so full, my cup overfloweth. And we also had meetings to look at quick changes and costume shifts and changes, as well as some of the props. So for props, you'll see we have albums here, and they're going to use it in the scene they're going to perform in like a minute. But we are making albums with the image of our actor, Ka'ula Krug, who plays Kauohi'onalani. So we have these special albums being made. And so we had a meeting today to kind of go over what all the albums are named and what do they look like and everything. And so it's just this excitement. I think we are on the last leg of this marathon. It's so magical. I don't have words for it already. It's just amazing. And again, I want to express my deep gratitude to every single hand that has gone into this. It's laulima. It's not something that one person does. It is something that a cadre of artists and contributors, collaborators make possible. So mahalo nui ya oko pakahia pau. At this point, yes, we're going to have a sneak peek. Yeah, we're going to have a short scene from Puana that our performers here will do, and they are also going to share one of the new compositions that Keawe and Zach have composed for us. And yeah, I think we'll move into that segment. And mahalo again to everyone who's made tonight possible. Hawaii Pono I Coalition, Center for Biographical Research, Hawaii Nui Akea School of Hawaiian Knowledge, OEV TV, and the Department of Theater and Dance here at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. E puana ka puana, a e mau ka puana, a e lohe ia. Mahalo.
E koa hie, he wahi ni nau ka'u.
He wahi pane paha ka'u.
Haha ia mea he mele Hawaii.
He haka?
He haka mea e Hawaii ai ke mele.
O ia mea he mele Hawaii, he mo'olelo ko ka mele, I haku ia me nā hua o lelo Hawaii, a me ka mana o Hawaii. Kuhi ia nā inoa aina, ka mo'oku au hau paha, ka ho'ailona, a he kani Hawaii.
He kani Hawaii, e like me ka pina'i.
Ai.
Me ke la kani hoe hoe ne paha.
Ai.
Pehea ke kupina I me ka ho'oho.
Oia no.
Pehea ka ho'ohana na I nā aka, a me na olelo mahuahua.
Pela ko uho o mapopo ana I ke kani makamele Hawaii. Pehea ko ho'okomo ana I ka hoa palena hulialo.
I uka, I kai, I luna, I lalo.
Kaila Hawaii.
He mana o Hawaii.
Ua kama ilio ia ke ia kumuhana.
Mahalo ia oe e ke hoa I ko kaua hoa kaka nei ke kaiona mea nui e Hawaii ai ke mele.
No leila ina kako haku I mele me na mana o Hawaii ka hua o lelo Hawaii ke kani Hawaii a me ke kaila Hawaii ina. He mele Hawaii no ia.
He ini paha ko olua e ho'o nau ki mai au. Ina pela? Ua ko.
Maupopole a ia mea he mele Hawaii ki a mana.
Ho'o kani kako ina mele Hawaii ina mele Hawaii o ke au I hala a me ke au nei.
Holo lei.
Ua lava.
I mea haka haku mele. I mea ia e pa'a I na mo'olelo. Wa haku na kupuna I na mele I pa'a I na mo'olelo o kola kouwa a... oia ka mea I ka aia kākou.
Ole ka haku mele ola I ka mo'olelo.
No leila kākou, ka poe I wali I ka olelo, e haku ai na mele hou.
Ke laua nei ka manawa a ole I lawa ka kākou ho'o ma'a ana. Puana hiki no?
Puana.
Puana.
Ho, mai hoe hoe nei hiki no?
Hoe hoe ne wai mapuna I ke kahuli leo kuli u halo I ua na ulu e ha e kolelo.
Mahalo for joining us this evening and joining us for this panel. Mahalo ya oko apau for tuning in. Please come and see our show here at Kennedy Theatre. This is the world premiere of Puana. We are running from the 27th of September, starting next week Friday, all the way to October 6th. That is the following Sunday. So please come and join us.
Yes, you can follow us at Puana Music on Instagram. There's a link there to get tickets and also to just follow along and updates for the rest of our rehearsal process. We're excited to have all of you fill up these beautiful seats here in Kennedy Theatre. E puana ka puana, a e mau loa ka puana a e lohe ia. Mahalo nui.
He puana ka puana, e puana ka